So, welcome to Tuesday morning. I'm a bit nervous about today because I know what's coming. Up until now, everything has been fairly beginner level. We've tried some advanced concepts, but nothing like what's in store for us today. We're really only moving on to 3 and 4 balls. We'll be covering a lot of the same techniques that we did yesterday, but some of the challenges we're going to face, especially after talking to Yorgos, I know are just going to break our brains. So what we're going to do this morning is we're going to learn a few new tricks, and we're going to spend a bit of time kind of refining some basics that we need to refine. And then around lunch, we're going to have a chat with Yorgos. Today's a day about 3 balls, so there's a wide variety of interesting things we can talk about. Hopefully a few new tricks. If you've been palm spinning a while, you may have a range of 3 and 4 ball things, but I'll feed you a few new pieces of information. This evening, we're going to branch off and talk about a very different style of stuff. We're going to look at tutting as a system for learning about movement, and we're going to learn a basic tutting sequence, and over the next few days, we'll apply that to some of what we're doing here with multi-ball. But anyways, that's Tuesday. Good morning. Let's do another little warm-up for our fingers. Make sure all of our digits are working correctly. Let's try our wave again. Make sure we hit each individual finger. Make a nice clean wave. Good, good, good. Make a fist, open it up, make a fist, open it up. Stretch, 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 stretch. Put a lot of force into it. Okay, let's go back to this wave. Yesterday we talked about imagining a ball was rolling in between those fingers and that it physically existed in space. We were playing with passing it back and forth and keeping the shape alive. Now here's what I want you to do. We're going to continue to imagine that that ball is there and that I'm moving it from side to side. But this time I want you to try and isolate the imaginary ball. So if your wave comes in, it's going to ripple underneath this point in space, which doesn't actually exist. Ripple, 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 around this object. We're going to contain our wave by isolating a section of it. And again, we're going to try to create the idea that there's something that exists in space. In fact, there is nothing. But if we carefully wave around the correct position, we can begin to make this illusion happen. It's a bit like... Okay, some of this is classic. Stretch your fingers out. Stretch your fingers out the other way. A lot of this is felt up here in the wrists. Pull your fingers out like this and make this tray position. Really stretch. The opposite position, push down a little bit. Stretch out that angle, stretch out this angle. To start, we're going to do a bit of a warm-up with our hands where we roll the ball around and exercise control in each of these different positions we have on our fingertips. But today, we're going to do it with 2 balls. Much like we did on Monday, I want you to explore rolling the balls right out to the tips of the fingers and along that ridge on the tips of the fingers, as well as the ridge on the base of the fingers and the one in the middle. And then roll it down into your palm. Find that line on the back of your palm. Move the ball outwards towards the thumb and move it back in. The new rule we're putting in this exercise is we want to imagine a mirror that is connecting our two fingers. We want to imagine that any movement we do on one side is going to be mimicked on the other side. And so we're trying to keep the balls looking like they are just a mirror reflection of one another. And explore all those different positions. Make sure you hit each of those points on the grid that we talked about yesterday. And again, take care moving it on the palm as you move back through here. Take care to smoothly and slowly work your way across and figure out where you're losing control. We're going to add one new kind of rotation in our set of basic two-ball rotations. Yesterday we took things as far as this. We learned how to keep one ball isolated and move the pattern around the ball so that the other ball just orbits. What we're doing here is we're doing a palm spin, and we're also moving our hand in a kind of spin. The two spins are symmetrical. As I rotate this way, my hand is also making a circle in the same direction, a synchronous circle. It leaves this effect, where one ball stays directly in the middle, and it shows a kind of mechanical precision. Then this thing called anti-spin came around, and we were forced to look at a basic rotation in a very different way. If my spin direction is this way, like this, and as I said, if my hand direction is also moving like this, I get an isolation. But what happens if those two forces are working in contrast to one another? What if I'm moving the balls to rotate this way, but my hand is rotating in the opposite direction circle? You begin to get a shape like this. An anti-spin rotation. All of the balls are moving, so it's difficult to know what to latch onto and what position you want to be in. But let's try the same tool that helped us learn our palm spin. This ball, if I'm doing my anti-spin correctly, wants to be moving in a line directly forwards and backwards. This ball, if I'm doing my anti-spin correctly, wants to be moving in a line exactly like this, only from side to side. I can check in each quarter rotation, in each position, to make sure that I've got something in the right place, simply by going like this. The first section of my rotation, this ball is now under my finger. The next section of my rotation, this ball is now under my finger. Third section of the rotation, this ball is under my finger. Fourth section of the rotation, this ball is under my finger. There's a cross that is made. It's drawn out by hitting these positions in each quarter rotation and lining everything up to form the anti-spin rotation. Now let's switch it a bit. Let's really focus on the whole line being drawn by one object. One, the other object across, the other one up. Each line of the cross is its own piece of a movement. Let's see what happens if we add an isolation into here. If we make one step of the movement, but then we isolate the ball that we just moved, effectively moving it backwards. If we make one step of the movement, rather than reversing, let's isolate that ball and move across. Notice we now have a new way of moving our balls around in a straight line. We can actually orbit one of the balls and do a kind of square that gets drawn around the center. It's a bit like a palm circle isolation, but this is squared. We are going to talk about our first pattern with 3 balls. And the main piece of technique that we're going to be using is this isolation from yesterday. Just a standard 2-ball isolation. And we're going to try to fit this third ball into the puzzle by exchanging it into the isolated ball position and pulling the orbiting ball out. But it looks like this. What I'm doing is reaching in front, and at this moment I'm transferring the ball from this position to this position on the hand, and I'm keeping it isolated the whole time so that now I'm free with my front hand to continue the isolation. And I can pull the third ball away. Again, this transfer right here. The same ball is staying isolated during this whole process, but we're changing which ball we are orbiting around in. What you'll notice as we make this switch, if we start to switch faster and faster, allowing only a half rotation, before each time we switch, we begin to see a new kind of pattern develop. So the big difference here is that now, rather than taking my isolated ball, I'm just going to be coming and stepping up in front of the front ball. The front ball is still going from side to side. I'm forgetting about my isolated ball. I'm just continually passing in front. The pattern is shifting from side to side. And what we have is something that, if you're a juggler, you're familiar with. This is a 3-ball cascade being done just on the fingers. Right now, we're not worrying about separating it, we're just worried about this general shuffling shape. Later on, we're going to talk about this in a much more detailed way. We're going to really break down where each ball should be at each time, but for right now, understanding this shape is enough, and then think about its reverse, pushing the ball through the center to the other hand. Cascade, reverse cascade. So let's think about some other kinds of shapes that we can make with 3 balls. One of the simplest of all is just this, a line. But what kind of things can we do with a line? Well, in this setup, I have 2 balls which are being controlled by this hand, and this one's free. So, in fact, my whole line, I have control over each individual ball. That allows me to do different things. One of the most emulated animals in all of the animal kingdom is probably a snake, at least by contact juggler standards. It's something that we continually try to copy. And what's funny is that an actual snake has a ripple, but it tends to move a bit like this through space. And the snake that contact jugglers are referring to, as well as kind of 8-bit video games, is a kind of pure snake where everything moves along one defined path. This is much more of a roller coaster than a snake. But in general, this is the kind of illusion that we are referring to when we talk about what the snake is. So again, in this position, the hand with 2 balls in it is my leader. And that front ball, this guy, is defining the path that the other balls are trying to follow exactly behind. I could switch and have my leader as the back ball. And I could also make a switch and have my leader be the front ball, but it by itself. Now my palm spinning hand is the follower, and reverse. My palm spinning hand becomes the leader, and my other hand becomes the follower. So, yesterday we talked a lot about some fundamental concepts for spinning 2 balls in one hand. And we talked about the importance of repeating certain exercises so that our fingers simply learn the job. We're going to step it up today, and we're going to put in that same kind of work, and we're going to be a bit more efficient by simply learning to do the same patterns we were doing before with 4 balls, 2 in each hand. This gives us the opportunity to let one hand learn from the other hand. If one hand is having a struggle making its way through a certain part of the rotation, you'd be surprised by how much you can learn just by trying to mimic exactly what the other hand is doing. So take all sets of balls, all four, rotate them so that you're pulling inwards. Right now, the balls meet and they come towards me, and then push towards the outside. Always meeting and pushing in towards me. And now try outward rotation. From the center, it's pushing out towards the audience. You're giving the balls away. What we have here is a mirror image rotation. Let's see what happens when we spin both patterns symmetrically. And reverse. Again, we're paying attention to the specific timing. The rhythm is very important because we want them to match up. We want them to make this line each time. Break apart, make the line. This is an exercise for simple, unbroken repetition. Use a piece of music, find the rhythm you want to work with, and explore asymmetrical mirror rotations. Symmetrical.